Tonight, you're not easing into anything gentle. You wouldn't survive till morning here. The night air bites your skin like a swarm of needles. The ground beneath you is damp enough to soak through bone, and every breath tastes of smoke and something rotting nearby. Somewhere in this Stone Age darkness, you hear footsteps that aren't yours, slow, deliberate, and getting closer. And the worst part, dawn, is still hours away. Because before the light returns, you'll discover the one threat no one warns you about, and it's not the cold, the hunger, or even the people hunting you. So before you get comfortable, throw a log on this fire, hit like, and subscribe if you want to keep walking these paths with me. Drop a comment with where you're watching from, and what time it is right now. It's strangely comforting to know we're all sitting in the same shadows together. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. Tonight, we leave behind the safety of your warm room and walk straight into a night where every sound could be your last. You've been walking for what feels like half a day, though it's probably only been a couple of hours. The air is thick, damp, and smells like wet leaves that have been composting since the dawn of time. Your lips are dry enough to crack, your tongue feels like sandpaper, and every step is accompanied by that dull throb behind your temples that only dehydration can deliver. It's not a romantic's adventurer's thirst. It's the kind that makes you imagine drinking from a dog bowl if it happened to be nearby. The sound comes first, so faint at the start you think it's just your pulse in your ears. A low, steady hush, almost like traffic far off in the distance. But there is no traffic here. The forest doesn't come with highways. The noise swells, and your brain locks on water, real water. You push through the underbrush, tripping over roots, brushing past ferns that slap at your arms. The sound grows clearer, more urgent. Your mouth waters an irony that almost makes you laugh. Then you see it. A stream, narrow but quick, cutting through the forest floor in a silver ribbon. Sunlight, what little manages to slip through the canopy, dances on its surface. It's the most beautiful thing you've seen since you arrived in this nightmare. No, scratch that, since the last time you opened your refrigerator and saw a perfectly chilled bottle of water just sitting there, waiting for you. You kneel, knees pressing into the soft, damp earth, and plunge your hands in. The cold is shocking, almost painful. You scoop and drink without thinking, without pausing, without wondering. It tastes clean, crisp, like the kind of artisanal bottled water that comes with a ridiculous price tag and a label written in a language you can't pronounce. For a moment, you close your eyes and let yourself believe this is the turning point, the moment your luck changes. Your body reacts like you've just given it liquid gold. You gulp, gulp again, and then keep going until you feel your stomach tighten with fullness. You lean back on your heels, dripping water down your chin, and let out a strange little laugh. Sorry, you murmur to no one. Evian doesn't have a branch here. It's the kind of line you might toss off at a backyard cookout, except here the only audience is the stream and a squirrel that looks mildly disgusted with you. The forest feels friendlier for the next few minutes. The colours are richer, the breeze is cooler, the light a little more golden. You even stand a little taller, as if hydration alone has given you back some dignity. Your head clears enough for you to start thinking about what's next, maybe finding better shelter, maybe figuring out how to make a fire. The future, for the first time since you landed in this mess, doesn't look like a solid wall of bad options. But here's the thing in this world. The things that look like blessings often come with a long, sharp hook buried deep inside them. And you've just swallowed one. That beautiful lake, clear stream. It's not the filtered tap water you grew up with. It's not the spring-fed luxury you once ordered by the case when you were flush from a big client payout. This water has been here for centuries, flowing through soil, roots, and whatever died upstream last week. It's carrying a microscopic army giardia, E. coli, cryptosporidium little organisms that have been perfecting the art of ruining your day since before there were days. You don't know it yet, but they're already in you. They don't care that you once had a gym membership, that you've negotiated contracts worth more than this entire forest, that you know your way around a cappuccino machine. They're in it for the long game, and their long game is short for you. You imagine yourself telling this story later, in some cafe, making your friends laugh about the time you drank from a wild stream. But you're not going to be telling it later. For now, you still feel good. Better than good, actually. Hydrated. Almost human again. You start walking downstream. thinking maybe it will lead to something, a bigger river, a clearing, even a path. You hum a little, a ridiculous habit in a place where sound carries and things with teeth listen. The forest smells fresher, your muscles ache a little less, and your mind starts to wander to food. Maybe you'll find berries. Maybe you'll even see a deer. And then, just as you're about to step over a fallen log, it happens. A twist. Deep in your gut. Not the polite nudge of hunger. Not the dull ache of too much walking. This is sharp, sudden, and commanding. You stop mid-step, one hand on your stomach. The pain blooms, stretching across your abdomen like a warning flare. You know this feeling, not exactly, but close enough. Somewhere in your memory. It's tied to that one time you ate questionable seafood at a business conference and spent the night bargaining with every deity you could name. Another cramp hits, stronger this time. You suck in a breath and feel sweat bead on your forehead, even though the air has cooled. Your mouth goes dry again in seconds. The stream still murmurs behind you, sounding smug now, like it knows what it's done. You straighten up, trying to convince yourself it's just your body adjusting, just the shock of cold water on an empty stomach. But deep down, you already know this isn't going away. Somewhere out there, in the microscopic world you can see, the war has started, and you're the battlefield. The first shiver catches you off guard. It starts in your shoulders, a quick involuntary twitch, like a hiccup in your muscles. You brush it off. Maybe it's just the adrenaline from finding the stream wearing off. But then another comes, this one dragging down your spine like an icy zipper. The air feels different now, thinner, sharper, like it's been run through some invisible set of teeth before it hits your skin. The breeze was harmless earlier, almost pleasant. Now it's testing you, sliding under the damp cotton of your shirt, probing for weaknesses. Your sleeves cling to your arms, soaked from leaning into the stream, and every movement squeezes more cold water against your skin. The fabric that was supposed to be a layer of protection has become a sponge, holding the chill against you like a grudge. You rub your arms hard, trying to coax warmth back in, but it's like trying to start a campfire with wet matches. The shaking grows more noticeable, rattling in your elbows and knees. Your brain takes a back seat to a more primal awareness. Cold is no longer a background condition. It's the main event. The trees sway above you, not in some cinematic, golden hour sway, but in a way that keeps spilling gusts of wind straight down onto you. You can almost picture the forest conspiring branches acting like funnels, delivering each draft straight to the dampest parts of you. You curse under your breath. Out here, it doesn't matter that you've pitched million-dollar deals or built entire businesses from scratch. None of that earns you an exemption from physics. Wet plus wind equals cold. Cold plus time equals trouble. You scan the immediate area. Shelter, that's the next step. A windbreak. Somewhere to hunker down until the temperature steadies. It doesn't have to be pretty, just functional. The ground is littered with broken branches, soggy leaves, clumps of moss. There's a boulder about the size of a small car, one side sloping like a crude wall. That could work. You start hauling whatever you can find, your fingers stiff and clumsy but still obeying for now. A few minutes in, you've got a sad-looking pile of branches leaning against the boulder. You wedge moss and leaves into the gaps, pretending it's insulation. It isn't. The wind slips right through, laughing in thin, invisible streams. You squat inside to test it, hugging your knees to your chest. The ground is cold and damp, and the moment you stop moving, the chill deepens, as if it's been waiting for you to sit still. Your mind does the math. This shelter will hold off maybe 10% of the wind. The rest will go straight through. But the thought of going back out to gather more materials, your hands are numb already, and your wet shirt has begun to feel like a layer of ice welded to your back. And here's where you hit the fork in the road. Do you stay put, curl into the meager protection you've got, and hope it's enough? Or do you push back out into the open to scavenge more material, burning what little energy you have left? You imagine the advice you'd give someone else. Don't settle for a half solution. Get it right. It sounds good in a warm office. Out here, the idea of stripping off your temporary shield to chase more branches feels like volunteering for punishment. You compromise, half-heartedly. You shuffle back out, grab a few more sticks, drag in some extra clumps of moss, and jam them into place. It looks fuller, but you know the truth. It's not going to trap heat. It's a placebo made of bark and hope. Inside, The wind still teases strands of your hair, still whispers through the seams. You tuck your head down, pressing your face against your knees, and the smell of damp fabric fills your nose. It's the scent of slow defeat of gear not meant for this world, worn by someone who isn't meant for it either. Minutes stretch. Your feet tingle unpleasantly. Not from warmth returning, but from circulation giving up. You clench and unclench your fists, willing blood back into your fingers. Outside, a branch snaps in the wind not close, but close enough to remind you that the forest has other players in it, ones who don't mind the cold. You think about how back home, cold meant turning up the thermostat or putting on a fleece you got at a conference. Here, it's something that moves with intent. It probes, seeps, waits. It's not a weather report, it's an adversary, and your makeshift lean-to. It's not an answer, it's a delay tactic. You lean back against the boulder, feeling the rocks chill through the layers of your clothes, and the truth settles in the shelter isn't protecting you. It's hiding you from the idea that you're in danger. You might as well be standing in the open. The breeze shifts, slipping through a new gap and cutting straight across your chest. You flinch involuntarily. Somewhere deep in your bones, the message is loud and clear: you can't stay here. Not like this. And yet, the thought of leaving means braving the wind head on, dragging yourself into the teeth of something you can't fight, only avoid. You close your eyes, just for a moment, trying to pretend the thin hiss of air is nothing, that the shelter will hold, but the shiver that grips you next is full body, sharp, and impossible to ignore. It feels like the forest just reminded you who's in charge. The light doesn't fade, it retreats. 1 minute there's a thin wash of gold filtering through the canopy, and the next it's gone, as if someone yanked a curtain shut over the entire sky. You blink hard, waiting for your eyes to adjust, but they're already wide open. The forest isn't just dim, it's gone black. You can't see your hand when you hold it in front of your face. You've known night before, the civilized kind street lamps glowing, neon signs buzzing, a TV flickering somewhere behind thin curtains. This isn't that. This is a blackout so complete it feels physical, like the air has thickened into ink. The shelter, the boulder, the trees, they don't fade into shadow. They vanish, swallowed whole. Your brain scrambles for the next most reliable sense, and hearing rushes in like a tidal wave. Every sound is amplified, stripped of its distance cues. The creak of branches above you is no longer a gentle sway, it's a groan. Old wood bending under a weight you can see. Somewhere off to the right, leaves crunch lightly, just once, then nothing. An insect rasps close enough to your ear that you swipe at it blindly. The wind threads through the trees, splitting into 100 hushed whispers, each one bending toward you. You tell yourself it's just air moving, but your pulse is already climbing. Darkness does that, it convinces you you're being studied. Welcome to hard mode, you mutter under your breath, now with the backlight turned off. The sound of your own voice is both comforting and unnerving. Comforting because it's proof you're still here. Unnerving because it feels too loud, like it just told something out there exactly where you are. You shift your weight, meaning to get more comfortable against the boulder, and your boot scuffs the ground. The sound is explosive in the quiet. You freeze instantly. Your ears strain, scanning the invisible space around you. For a few heartbeats, there's nothing but the faint hiss of wind through leaves. Then, faint but distinct, the rhythm changes a shuffle, soft but deliberate from somewhere behind you. It's not the random patter of a squirrel or the flutter of a bird. This is heavier, slower, with pauses between steps, as if whatever's moving is placing its feet with care. Your mouth goes dry, you twist your head slightly, trying to line up your ears like radar dishes, but every direction sounds wrong. The forest has become an echo chamber, bouncing noise back at you from all angles. The hair on your neck lifts, and for a second you're sure there's warm breath against your skin, though you know that's impossible. You think about turning on your phone's flashlight, then remember the black rectangle in your pocket is as dead as the moon above, and even if it weren't, a narrow beam of light might just frame you like a target in the dark. Your heart is thumping hard now, not from exertion but from the animal certainty that something is near. You consider calling out some half-formed idea that maybe it's a person, maybe they can help, but the thought collapses under its own stupidity. Out here, Anything that walks on two legs is just as likely to be trouble. The shuffle comes again, closer this time. The space between you and whatever's making it feels like it's narrowing. You hold your breath without meaning to, the way you might when a wasp drifts too close to your ear. You tell yourself to move, to stand, to put the boulder at your back, but your legs aren't taking orders. It's as if your body has decided that stillness is the only safety. Your fingers curl into the dirt, anchoring you to the ground. A twig snaps clean. Quick, close enough that you can feel the vibration in your chest. You don't turn around. You can't. Every primal instinct you've got is screaming the same thing. Don't give it your back, but don't face it either. Just stay small, stay quiet, hope it loses interest. The darkness presses harder, wrapping around you until it's hard to tell where you end and it begins. Your ears are working overtime, cataloguing every creak, every rustle, every breath of wind, trying to find the one sound that means danger. And then you hear it again, the steady, unhurried steps. Now close enough that you can picture weight pressing into the forest floor, crushing leaves and soil. Whatever it is, it's not in a hurry. It knows you're not going anywhere. You've been sitting in the dark long enough for your eyes to invent shapes that probably aren't there. The cold has worked its way deep now, setting up camp in your muscles. Every small movement grinds the stiffness in further, and with each shiver, the same thought comes back. Clearer and clearer, you need fire. Not for romance, not for the mood. Fire means heat, light, protection. Without it, you're just meat waiting to cool. You start with the obvious. Bow drill. You saw it once, some guy on a wilderness channel, sweat dripping down his face as he spun a spindle against a baseboard until smoke curled up like magic. You remember thinking, how hard can it be? Now you're about to find out. The first problem is finding the right wood. The forest floor offers you sticks that are all wrong, too green, too damp, too brittle. You settle for a pair that seem dryish and start carving, except you don't have a knife. You rub one end of the spindle on a rock to blunt it, but the effort already feels like a tax you can't afford. You try anyway, looping a shoelace around the spindle, bending a bent branch into a bough. You start sawing back and forth. The motion is clumsy, jerky. The spindle jumps out of its notch, skitters into the dirt. You pick it up, reset, try again. The rhythm is off too fast, then too slow. Your palms start to ache from gripping the bow. Your thighs burn from crouching. Minutes pass. Your shoulders throb. There's no smoke, no smell of heated wood, just the sound of your own breathing growing louder in your ears. You remember the host of that video grinning into the camera after less than a minute, holding a glowing ember like a trophy. You start to hate him. Fine. New approach. Flint and steel. You don't have steel, but you do have rocks. You pick up two with sharp edges and start knocking them together. The sound is dull, disappointing. You smash harder, and at last, there it is, a spark. Tiny, weak, but real. Your chest tightens with excitement. You aim the next strike toward your sad little pile of tinder, a handful of dry-looking leaves you scrape together from under the boulder. The spark lands. For a split second, the leaf edges glow. You lean in, blowing gently. The glow brightens. False victory surging in your chest before a sneaky gust of wind snakes through the gap in your shelter and snuffs it out like it was never there. You stare at the leaves. They look smug now, as if they knew all along this was a waste of your dwindling energy. You smash the rocks again, angling for another spark, but your hands are stiff, and the cold has made your grip unreliable. Each failed strike grinds your nerves thinner. YouTube doesn't teach survival. You mutter, low and bitter, the words fogging in the air. It teaches confidence, the kind that wilts the second your fingers go numb and the wind decides it's against you. You try again, back to the bow drill. The shoelace is fraying now, fibers splitting under the strain. The spindle wobbles like it's mocking your technique. You push harder, arms trembling, sweat beading on your forehead despite the chill. The smell of wood dust teases you into hope. You double your effort, feel the burn in your biceps, the scrape in your palms, and then the spindle jumps out again, rolling uselessly into the dirt. Your breath is ragged now, not from cardio, from frustration. You sit back, cross-legged, staring at your fire kit like it's a failed prototype you can't return. Fire was supposed to be your comeback moment, the thing that proved you could adapt. Instead, It's become a mirror reflecting just how far you are from the people who once did this without thinking. The ones who didn't have to learn from videos because they learned from childhood. By watching, by doing, by failing until it worked. Your hands are raw now, skin scraped thin over knuckles. You pick up the spindle again, force yourself into one more round. The bow slides, the baseboard skitters. The whole contraption feels like it's conspiring against you. When you finally stop, it's not because you've decided to quit, it's because you physically can't keep going. Your arms are lead, your fingers unresponsive, your breath short and shallow. The cold rushes back in instantly, filling the space where effort had kept it at bay. You push the bow aside and slump back against the boulder. The wind slips through the cracks in your shelter and touches your skin with deliberate malice. You close your eyes, but the image of that brief spark still burns behind your lids, mocking you with what almost was. In the silence, you can hear your own pulse in your ears, slow and heavy. You don't feel stronger for trying, you feel smaller, reduced to someone who believed watching was the same as knowing. The ember that should have been in your hands is somewhere else now, in another life, with someone who didn't have to guess. The night stretches ahead, and without fire, it feels a lot longer. The cold doesn't just touch you anymore, it moves in. It's not the polite kind you shake off with a brisk walk or a hot drink. This is a tenant that doesn't plan to leave. It has weight now, a presence, settling into your muscles and bones until every movement feels like lifting wet cement. The shivering starts small, the kind you might get stepping out of a hot shower into an over-air-conditioned room, but it builds, gathering in your spine, radiating down your limbs until your whole frame shakes. You hug yourself, trying to trap some of the heat bleeding away. But your clothes are still damp from the stream and sweat from the fire attempt. The fabric clings cold and clammy, making sure every ounce of warmth you create leaks straight out. Your jaw begins to chatter. It's not just a sound, it's a metronome marking the slow tempo of your body surrender. You tell yourself to move, to walk in place, do jumping jacks, something, anything to push heat back into circulation. But there's a catch: movement burns calories, and calories are a currency you're running out of fast. And here's the decision point. Do you keep moving, burning through your reserves for the sake of heat, or stay still, conserving energy while the cold creeps deeper? You stand anyway. The logic part of your brain mumbles about energy deficit and glycogen stores, but the survival part drowns it out with one simple command. Don't let the cold win. You pace inside your shelter, which feels like walking inside a sieve. Wind slithers through every gap, licking at your skin. You swing your arms, stamp your feet, trying to convince your body it's still capable of generating heat. For a few minutes, it works. The shaking eases just enough for you to believe you're making progress. But then the dizziness hits. A sudden tilt in your vision, like the ground just shifted a fraction of an inch. You steady yourself against the boulder, feeling the chill of the rock seep through your palm. You remember reading once that hypothermia doesn't arrive all at once, it's a slide. Stage 1 is the shivering and numbness, the clumsy fingers and stiff joints. Stage 2 is worse, violent shivering, slurred speech, confusion. And stage 3, well, stage 3 is when you stop shivering altogether. Not because you're better, but because your muscles can't spare the energy. You test your grip on a stick lying beside you. Your fingers don't close around it the way they should. They feel thick, uncooperative, like they belong to someone else. That's not a good sign. The wind picks up outside, threading through the trees with a low hum, and you just know that if you sit down now, if you curl into yourself and try to rest, it'll be a long time before you get back up. You force yourself into another round of pacing, though it's slower now, more stagger than stride. Your knees feel loose, unreliable. Every step sends a tremor up your thighs. The cold isn't just physical anymore, it's psychological. It strips away optimism first, then determination. You stop thinking in plans and start thinking in maybes. Maybe it's not that bad. Maybe I can make it to morning like this. Maybe I can just close my eyes for a bit. You crouch, meaning only to rest your legs for a moment, but the instant you stop moving, the cold slides in like water through an open door. Your chest tightens, the shivers ramp back up, violent now, making your teeth clack so hard it sends shocks through your skull. You try to picture warmth-y warmth just to trick yourself into holding on. You think of your old living room in winter, the hum of the heater, the way your favourite chair seemed to cradle you. You can almost feel it until another gust slices through and rips the image away. Your head dips forward. You snap it back up. Alarm bells faintly ringing somewhere in the fog. You need to keep moving. You plant your palms against the boulder, push yourself upright, and stumble into a half-hearted walk. The ground feels uneven, though you know it isn't. Your legs don't seem to land where you tell them to. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you realize you've stopped shivering for a few minutes. That's supposed to be bad. Very bad. But the idea doesn't spark urgency. It feels fine. You mistake that false comfort for progress, not the warning it is. The forest seems quieter now, but not in a peaceful way. More like it's holding its breath, watching to see what you'll do next. You glance at your hands and notice the skin has gone pale, almost bluish, in the thin moonlight. You try to flex your fingers. They respond slowly, as if the message got lost on the way. Cold takes hope. You didn't believe that an hour ago. Now it feels like the most accurate sentence ever spoken. Not because you're ready to quit, but because the cold convinces you quitting might be acceptable. You shake your head, trying to physically throw the thought out, and keep moving in jerky circles. It's not much, but it's enough to feel your heart kick a little faster in your chest. The rhythm is uneven, but at least it's there. You know you can do this all night. You're burning fuel you don't have. But for now, each shaky step buys you a little more time, and time is the only thing you've got left to spend. It starts as a dull pressure in your lower abdomen, the kind you might get from skipping lunch and eating dinner too fast. You ignore it. You've been ignoring a lot of discomfort lately. But within minutes, that pressure sharpens into a twisting knot that demands all your attention. At first you think, maybe it's just hunger, but hunger doesn't stab you like this. Doesn't make your gut feel like it's trying to wring itself out like a wet towel. You double over instinctively, one hand on your stomach, the other gripping your knee for balance. Then the cramps come in, waves tighten, release. Tighten again, each one stealing a little more of your breath. You know what's happening before the first cold sweat breaks across your skin. You drank from that perfect, sparkling stream, and now the bill is due. When it hits fast. Your body switches to evacuation mode, dumping anything and everything it can, as if the only way to survive is to empty the tank entirely. You stagger into the brush, every step making your gut clench harder. There's no dignity here, no moment to plan, just urgency, heat in your face, and a single, overwhelming priority now. The relief is immediate but short-lived. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, only to realize your hand is shaking, part cold, part exhaustion. You try to stand upright, but another cramp grabs you from the inside, doubling you over again. Then comes the other half of the betrayal. Your stomach decides it wants to participate too, wrenching upward with a violence that leaves your throat raw. There's nothing in there hasn't been for hours, so you just dry heave until your ribs ache. It's official, the war has started, and you're losing ground fast. The enemy isn't claws or teeth, it's invisible, microscopic, older than your species and far better adapted to this environment. Giardia, E. coli, Cryptosporidium. Their names sound like pharmaceutical commercials back home, but out here, they're warlords and you're just an occupied territory. You try to laugh, because the alternative is panic. Natural detox. You croak to no one, free of charge. The sound comes out more like a cough than humour, but you cling to it anyway. The problem isn't just what's leaving your body, it's what's not staying. Every drop of fluid you lose is water you can't replace without drinking from the same contaminated source. And every time you drink from it, you feed the same invaders that are hollowing you out. You sit down, back against a tree, legs bent awkwardly to take pressure off your gut. The forest tilts a little, and you realize you're lightheaded. Dehydration isn't a threat days away, it's hours. Your tongue sticks to the roof of your mouth. Your lips crack when you try to lick them. The cruel irony is that you're surrounded by water. You can hear it rushing over rocks just a few dozen yards away, mocking you with its false promise. Your body is screaming for it, every cell begging for moisture, and you know that if you give in, the cycle will just speed up. You think about boiling it like every survival book says, but that requires fire, and you've already lost that battle once tonight. Without it, you're stuck in the worst kind of trap drink and die slowly, or don't drink and die faster. Another cramp hits, and you slide onto your side, curling around it like it's a wound. You stare at the forest floor inches from your face-brown leaves, a beetle dragging something twice its size, and think about how absurd this all is. Back home, stomach trouble meant calling in sick, staying in bed, maybe sipping ginger tea. Here, it's an eviction notice for your life. You close your eyes, just for a second, to ride out the pain. When you open them, the light feels different, not warmer, just thinner. You're not sure if it's the time of day or your own vision fading around the edges. Either way, you know you can't stay here. You push yourself up, legs trembling, and take a few shaky steps toward the sound of the stream. You hate yourself for it, but thirst wins over logic. You kneel at the bank, cup your hands, and drink. The water is icy, clean in taste, merciless in consequence. You already know what it will do to you, but for the moment, the cool rush down your throat is worth it. When you stand again, a little steadier for now, you realize this is how the war will be fought battle after battle, each one taking a little more from you. And in this war, there's no victory. There's only how long you can hold the line. It's amazing how fast hunger shifts from a background annoyance to the main event. At first, it's just a light emptiness, a hollow space under your ribs that you figure you can ignore until you stumble across something edible. But now, it's a living thing and animal in your gut, pacing, snarling, clawing at the inside of your skin. You can almost feel it in your bloodstream, that biological alarm bell ringing in every cell. Feed me, or we start dismantling the ship. And dismantling is exactly what's happening. Your body, short on outside supplies, turns inward, glycogen stores gone, fat reserves, burning, and now the process gets ugly. Your body has moved to muscle. The science of it plays like a cruel joke. Your biceps, their breakfast now, your thighs, lunch. If you make it to dinner, it might be your own back muscles on the menu. The proteins that should be fueling movement are being stripped for parts just to keep your heart beating and your brain functioning. You don't need a textbook to feel it. The weakness isn't subtle anymore. Your legs feel heavier than they should. Your arms hang a little lower. Standing up from the damp ground takes 2 attempts instead of 1. The forest around you feels bigger, harder to navigate, as if someone secretly tilted the earth and made every step uphill. You scan for food like a desperate shopper in an empty grocery store, eyes darting from bush to branch, leaf to shadow. Your standards are plummeting by the minute. A handful of berries, a scrap of meat, a forgotten granola bar from your old life, anything. Then you hear it. Not food exactly, but the possibility of it. A rustle ahead, the kind that comes from something moving against the grain of the forest. You freeze, ears tilting toward the sound. It comes again, a soft, steady munching, like someone chewing slowly. You move forward, careful at first, then faster as your excitement builds. Through a break in the brush, you see it a deer. Smaller than the ones back home, but still easily twice your weight. Standing broadside, head down, tearing at the moss. Your heart surges. This is it. Protein. Salvation. All you need to do is get close enough. You take one slow step, then another, avoiding the dry leaves where you can, but stealth isn't something you've practiced outside of sneaking into the kitchen at night. The third step lands on a twig, and it snaps like a starter pistol. The deer's head shoots up. For one long second, you lock eyes. It's not fear you see, it's calculation. Then it's gone, springing into the trees with a speed and grace that makes you look like you're standing still. You lunge after it, driven by the same animal desperation that's been growing in your belly. Your feet pound the uneven ground, branches slap your face, your lungs burn, but the deer is already a ghost. It steps silent, its body slipping between the trees like water through fingers. After 30 seconds, you're done. Not because you've given up, but because your legs stop responding to the idea of running. You slow to a stagger, then a standstill, bent over, hands on your knees. You suck in air like you're trying to drink it, but it doesn't help. The space where the deer stood is just a patch of empty forest now, the moss still swaying from where it fed. You step forward, touching it like maybe you can absorb something from the spot. Of course, you can't. That's when it hits you not the deer's absence, but what it represents. Even if by some miracle you had caught it. What then? No weapon, no knife, no fire to cook with, no strength to carry it. The meat would rot faster than you could figure out how to eat it safely. Hunger sharpens into frustration, then slides into something heavier. You're not a hunter. You're not even competition. You're an audience member in a show where survival is the main act, and the performers are everything but you. You drop to sit on a fallen log, head in your hands, listening to your own breathing, slow from frantic to exhausted. The animal in your gut hasn't gone quiet. It's just waiting, teeth bared, ready to chew through whatever's left of you. A part of you wants to laugh at the absurdity, how quickly you've gone from fine food to find anything, even bark, even bugs. Another part of you is too tired to bother. Hunger isn't just a physical condition anymore. It's a lens over your eyes, tinting every thought with desperation. You look down at your hands. They're trembling again, but not from cold this time. This is the shake that comes when your body is mining itself for fuel. You rub them together, partly for warmth, partly to remind yourself they still work. But the truth is settling in. Slow and heavy you're on the menu, and your body is already eating. And there's nothing you can do to stop it except find food or become it. You tell yourself there's no point chasing animals anymore, not with your strength leaking out of you like water from a cracked jar. If you're going to eat, it'll have to be something that can't run, something rooted. The forest is full of greens if you're willing to look, leaves in every shade, vines curling up trunks, clusters of berries tucked into the shadows. From a distance, it's a feast. Up close, it's a museum buffet, everything perfectly displayed, nothing you're allowed to touch without risking your life. You start with what looks familiar, broad green leaves, low to the ground, a faint peppery smell when you rub one between your fingers. Back home, you toss this into a salad without thinking. Here, you think too much. You remember stories about plants with edible twins, show one will fill you, the other will shut down your liver. You drop it back to the dirt. A few steps later, you find berries. Small, red, glossy. They look like something that should come with a dollop of whipped cream. You roll one between your fingers, remembering a photo in a foraging book, Wild Currants. Maybe. But another memory pushes in baneberries, nearly identical at a glance, but loaded with toxins, the kind that kill by shutting down your heart before you can say, oops. You let the berry fall and walk away. Every promising find comes with a mental coin toss, edible or deadly meal or mistake. Without the coin landing safely every time, you don't dare. Then you see it, a patch of leafy greens sprouting in the dappled shade near a fallen log. The shape is familiar, almost comforting, a rounded leaf, pale green stems. You crouch, sniff. No sharp or chemical scent, nothing that screams poison. You take one small bite, chew slowly, bitter, yes, but not revolting. You wait. A few minutes pass. No burning tongue, no numb lips, no immediate cramps. False victory starts to bloom in your chest. You gather a small handful, chewing them one at a time, forcing yourself not to inhale them all at once. The bitterness is strong enough to make your jaw tighten, but you tell yourself it's food, and food is fuel. 10 minutes later, the cramps start. They're different from the waterborne ones higher up, sharper, quick to twist and release, like your stomach is making an example out of you for daring to hope. You try to keep walking, but the pressure doubles you over. Your mouth floods with saliva, the kind of warning your body sends when it's ready to reverse course. You stagger to the side of the trail you weren't even following, brace one hand against a tree, and retch. The greens come up in bitter, stringy waves, leaving your throat raw and your chest aching. You wipe your mouth with the back of your hand, spit the last of the taste into the dirt, and laugh once short, humorless. Guess that wasn't on the menu. The world tilts a little when you stand. You've lost more than you gained, both in energy and morale. The animal in your gut, the one that's been pacing for hours, seems angrier now, more desperate. It's no longer just hunger, it's betrayal. You press on, scanning again, but everything you see now feels suspect. The mushrooms clustered on a rotting stump, are they edible? Or are they the kind that liquefy your liver? The small nuts scattered under an oak could be safe, could be loaded with tannins that will make your kidneys curse your name. Every leaf, every berry, every root feels like it's daring you to guess wrong. And in this game, the consolation prize is vomiting into the dirt again. Eventually you stop looking. Not because you've given up on food entirely, but because the act of hope seeing something, thinking it might help, Then remembering how easily it could kill you feels more exhausting than hunger itself. You sit on a patch of moss, knees up, arms resting on them, staring at the forest floor like it might offer you a truce. It doesn't. The greens sway gently in the breeze, the berries glisten in the filtered light, and you know they'll still be here tomorrow, waiting for someone who can tell the difference. That someone isn't you, not today, not like this. And the truth settles heavy in your chest in this museum buffet. You're not a guest, you're an exhibit. The modern human, surrounded by food, starving in plain sight. It starts in your legs. Not a sharp pain, not even a cramp, just a strange, heavy weakness. Like someone quietly replaced your bones with sand. You tell yourself it's just fatigue, something you can shake off if you keep moving. But every step feels a little less connected to the command you're giving it, as if there's a lag between the thought and the motion. You pause, leaning on a tree for balance. The bark digs into your palm, rough and cold, but it's something solid, something real. You take a breath and push forward. 10 feet later, you stumble over a root you barely saw. Normally, you'd recover without thinking, catch yourself, move on. This time, you don't. You go down hard, hands scraping against the dirt before your knees hit. You sit there for a moment, not because you're hurt, but because getting up feels like a negotiation you're not sure you'll win. Your arms are shaking, not from effort, but from the absence of it, from the slow drain of energy that started yesterday and hasn't stopped since. You've burned through food, fat, even muscle, and now your body is pawning off anything it can to keep the lights on inside. Your reflexes, once automatic, are gone. You're no longer a well-oiled machine. You're a puppet whose strings have been cut, still upright only because gravity hasn't quite finished the job. Standing takes longer this time. You sway once you're up, the forest tilting slightly, the horizon refusing to sit still. You blink hard, but the dizziness doesn't lift, it just settles in, like an uninvited guest making itself comfortable. Back home, you prided yourself on control. You built companies, closed deals, navigated tight deadlines, kept your hand steady on the wheel even in bad weather. Control was your edge. Out here, control is an illusion. Your body doesn't care about your willpower, you're a sum, or the fact that you once pulled an all-nighter to save a project. It's operating on its own rules now, and those rules are brutal: conserve energy, cut systems, protect the core. Your feet drag more than they step, toes catching on the uneven ground. A low branch grazes your forehead because you don't duck in time. You're moving slower, reacting later. In a city, that might get you a few annoyed looks. Here, it's a death sentence you can't see coming until it's too late. Your vision narrows in odd ways. The center stays sharp enough, but the edges blur and pulse, as if the forest is closing in. You find yourself staring at one spot on the ground while the rest of the world swirls like a painting left out in the rain. It's disorienting, and worse, it's distracting. A bird bursts out of a nearby bush, wings beating the air with a sudden roar. You flinch a second too late, your hand reaching for a branch that isn't there. You end up leaning sideways, catching yourself against the same bush, heart racing from something that shouldn't have surprised you. That delay, the half-second gap between stimulus and response, is the loudest alarm bell you've had yet. You're not just tired, you're failing. You try to think strategically, but even your thoughts feel slower, heavier. It's like typing on a keyboard where every third key sticks, you can still get the sentence out, but it takes longer, and by the end you've forgotten why you started. You glance at your hands, noticing how they tremble when you hold them out in front of you. The skin is pale, fingers thinner than they were 2 days ago. The forest isn't helping. The ground rolls under you with roots, rocks, dips, and soft patches of moss that swallow your steps. Every few yards there's another obstacle, fallen branch, hidden hole, loose stone that requires attention you can't quite muster. You used to scan ahead naturally, eyes pulling in details before you reach them. Now you're reacting only when something is directly in your path, and sometimes not even then. Your body's in survival mode, but it doesn't feel like it's on your side. It's conserving resources, yes, but the cost is steep, slower reflexes, less coordination, reduced focus. The kind of trade-offs that make sense to a body preparing for a long fight but will get you killed in a short one. You keep moving because stopping feels like the first step toward lying down for good, but it's not graceful. Your gait is uneven, one foot planting heavier than the other, knees wobbling under your own weight. It's the walk of someone carrying a load they can't set down, except the load is you. Once, a thin vine loops around your ankle without you noticing. You trip, pitching forward, your shoulder slamming into a tree. The bark bites through your damp shirt, and for a moment you just stay there, forehead against the trunk, breathing hard. You don't have the energy to be angry about it. There's no drama in this kind of decline. No sudden collapse, no cinematic moment of realization. Just a slow, grinding surrender as your systems shut down one by one, leaving you with less and less of yourself to work with. You push off the tree and keep going, each step an act of will rather than instinct. You don't trust your legs anymore. You watch them like you'd watch unreliable employees, half expecting them to quit without warning. The forest feels bigger, the distance is longer, even the air feels heavier, as if it's pressing you down toward the earth. You remind yourself that your ancestors lived like this, burning calories, chasing food, enduring discomfort as a daily norm, but they weren't starting from zero. They weren't stripped of muscle, dehydrated and poisoned all at once. They had the training, the skills, the tribe. You have damp clothes and the stubborn refusal to stop moving. A flicker of movement catches your eye, a squirrel darting up a tree. It's so fast you almost convince yourself you imagined it. There's no chance you could have reacted in time to catch it. But the fact that you barely registered it before it was gone drives the point home you're not a predator here. You're barely an observer. You stop for a moment to steady yourself, planting both feet wide, closing your eyes against the spinning sensation that's become too familiar. You take a breath, then another, focusing on the feel of your chest rising and falling. It's a small thing, but right now, small things are victories. When you open your eyes again, the forest is still there, endless, indifferent, unmoved by your struggle, and you keep walking. Because even if your body is no longer fully under your command, the alternative is worse. You're a puppet with fraying strings, but for now, you can still move, and as long as you can still move, you haven't fallen. Yet. It happens so subtly you almost miss it. One moment the forest is its usual noisy self-wind moving through the canopy, birds trading calls, the occasional insect buzzing close enough to swipe at, and the next, it's wrong. Not quiet in the way a room falls silent when someone enters, but quiet in the way air feels before a storm, a stillness that presses against your skin. You stop walking without meaning to. Your ears stretch for something familiar, something to anchor to, but all you hear is the drum of your own heartbeat. The birds have gone, the wind too. Even the insects seem to have vanished. It's as if the entire forest has stepped back into the shadows, leaving you alone in the clearing, alone or not alone at all. Your eyes scan the ground, searching for something to justify the knot tightening in your chest. At first, nothing. Then you see it, a depression in the dirt, oval, wide, pressed deep into the soil, too large to be a deer, too rounded to be a bear, fresh. The edges are clean, no leaves or debris settled inside. You crouch, one hand hovering over it as if proximity alone might tell you more. The size, the depth, it belongs to something heavy, something that moves with purpose. A few feet away, another mark catches your eye, 4 parallel gouges carved into the side of a tree trunk, each one as long as your hand. They're not frantic scratches, they're deliberate, like someone testing the edge of a blade. The stillness grows heavier, pressing into your ears until you realize you're holding your breath. You exhale quietly, the sound unnervingly loud in the absence of everything else. That's when you feel it not on your skin, but in the air itself. A presence. It's the kind of awareness that bypasses logic. You don't see anything, don't hear anything, but every nerve in your body is convinced you're being watched. The tiny hairs along your neck lift as if trying to point you in the right direction. Your eyes dart to the edges of your vision, scanning the underbrush, the low branches, the shadowed spaces between trees. Nothing moves, and yet something moves. The thought doesn't make sense, but your body accepts it without question. Then comes the sound, so faint you almost mistake it for your own imagination. A breath, not the wind, not the soft hiss of leaves shifting, but an exhale. Slow, measured, close. Your mind starts offering possibilities: a large cat, a wolf, Maybe something that's been extinct long enough to be a trivia answer back home. None of them end well for you. You shift your stance, trying to look casual in case whatever's watching can read posture, but your knees are locked, your arms stiff at your sides. You want to run, but your legs don't trust you right now. You turn your head just enough to scan over your shoulder. Still nothing. Which somehow feels worse than seeing a set of eyes glowing in the undergrowth. At least eyes mean you can measure the distance. This means it could be anywhere. Your brain goes tactical, unspooling scenarios without your permission. If it's behind you, maybe you can circle toward higher ground. If it's circling, maybe you can back against a tree and limit the angles of attack. If it's already close, your stomach tightens. You probably won't know until you feel it. You take one slow step backward. The ground beneath your heel gives with the soft crackle of a dry leaf. The sound detonates in the silence. You freeze. Somewhere to your left, a twig snaps. Clean, decisive. The roar of your own pulse drowns out whatever follows, and you realize the motif is true. Silence can roar. It roars now, filling your head with the absence of every other sound, amplifying the weight of the one you just heard. You fight the urge to break into a sprint. Predators chase what runs. You know that much, at least. So you shift your weight, slow and deliberate, trying to keep your movement smooth. The air feels denser with every breath, the scent of damp earth mixed now with something else. Faint, musky, animal. Not the distant whiff you sometimes catch from a deer, but closer, warmer. The kind of scent you'd only notice when you're sharing space. Your hand brushes against the nearest tree trunk, fingers splayed against the rough bark. You tell yourself it's just to steady your balance, but part of you is mapping out your first climb if it comes to that. Another snap closer this time. Not in front of you, not behind you, but off to the side, just far enough to make you question your own orientation. You realize that whatever it is, it's not rushing, it's not charging in for the kill, it's tracking you, measuring you, letting you walk deeper into whatever it's already decided is its space. A bead of sweat breaks at your temple, slides down the side of your face, and chills instantly in the cool air. Your throat is tight, your breath shallow. You know you can't stand here forever, but you also know every move you make is being weighed, and then, from somewhere you can't place. The sound of leaves shifting, a slow step, another. The pace is unhurried, almost lazy. The confidence of something that doesn't need to rush. You swallow hard, eyes fixed on the gap between two trees ahead. If you move now, maybe you can reach it, maybe put more ground between you and the weight pressing in from the dark. But before you take that first step, the forest holds its breath again, and you feel it, that certainty that whatever's out there just matched your decision with its own. You've been staring at the ground so long you start to see faces in the rocks. Not friendly faces, jagged ones, sharp-edged, the kind that look like they've been waiting a few million years to prove they're more than just decoration. Somewhere in that blur of shapes, you spot a stone with one clean kind flat side and a point that could pass for a blade if you squint. It's not much, but in your current state, it feels like potential. A tool. Maybe even the start of something useful, a cutting edge for shaping wood, cleaning a fish you don't have, or just making you feel less like you've shown up to a gunfight with your bare hands. You pick it up and find another rock that looks harder, rounder, something you can use to chip away at the first one. You've seen this in museums, documentaries, the occasional 10 ways to survive without modern tools video. The experts always made it look elegant. Controlled strikes, tiny flakes falling away until a blade emerges like a secret finally told. Your first hit is neither elegant nor controlled. The stone bounces in your grip, jarring your wrist. You reset, hit again. A small piece breaks off progress, maybe encouraged. You keep going, aiming for the same spot. Another flake comes loose. Then another. You start to imagine the finished product a crude hand axe, edges sharp enough to slice, something that could actually change the equation out here. You get a little cocky, you adjust your grip, lean in closer for more precision. The next strike sends a jagged shard flying straight into the heel of your hand. It happens fast to sting, then heat, then the unmistakable sensation of skin parting. You jerk your hand back and watch as blood wells up, bright against the pale grime on your fingers. For a second, you just stare at it, half expecting your brain to rewind the scene and undo the mistake. But now this is your first spark, and it's your own blood. You laugh, Once, sharp and bitter. Out here, fire is a dream, but injury you can make in seconds. The cut isn't deep, but it's messy. The skin around it already looks angry, dirt and tiny flecks of rock clinging stubbornly. Instinct says, clean it, but the only water you have is the same parasite cocktail currently staging a mutiny in your gut. You spit on it instead, rubbing gently with your thumb, which mostly smears the mess around. You try to go back to shaping the stone, but your grip is off now. Every strike sends a throb up your palm. The blood keeps seeping, making the rock slick, forcing you to adjust and readjust. Eventually you set it down, realizing that the tool you were trying to make isn't anywhere close to finished. And the tool you actually made is a wound that could kill you just as easily as any predator. It's absurd. You came out here hoping to make something sharp enough to defend yourself, and you ended up sharpening the odds against you. In a boardroom or a workshop, mistakes cost time, maybe money. Here, they cost blood, and blood is a currency you can't print more of. You wrap the cut in a scrap torn from the bottom of your shirt, knotting it clumsily with your teeth. The fabric soaks through almost immediately, turning dark. You tighten it, wincing, and try not to think about the bacteria-rich world you've just invited inside your skin. Somewhere in your head, the survival instructor's voice is reading from the manual. Keep wounds clean and dry, change dressings frequently, apply antiseptic. You'd settle for just one of those options, but you've got none. Not even a band-aid. You glance back at the stones, lying where you dropped them. They look innocent now, as if they had nothing to do with it. You know better. Out here, everything takes its cut time. Energy, heat, flesh. The forest doesn't care what you meant to make. It only measures what you've already lost. Your hand throbs in time with your heartbeat. You flex your fingers experimentally, testing for damage. They work, but slowly, stiffly, like they're already bracing for the infection they know is coming. You think about the irony, how many hours you've spent in your old life scrolling articles about primitive toolmaking or self-reliance without ever once picking up a rock. You thought knowing the concept meant you were prepared, but out here, concepts don't cut wood or skin game. They just cut you. The wind shifts, sending a cool thread of air over the open wound. You shiver not from cold this time, but from the sudden clarity of it all. You didn't just fail to make a tool, you succeeded in making yourself weaker. You pick up the unfinished stone, turn it over once, then drop it for good. Whatever fight you've got left doesn't need another open door for this place to walk through. And as you start moving again, cradling your hand against your chest, the forest seems to close in just a little tighter, as if it's already counted you among the easy ones. It begins with a throb, not the kind you get from banging your hand on a desk, the kind that fades after a few minutes. This one pulses in steady waves, deep and hot, radiating from the cut in your palm. At first you think it's just from overusing it, the clumsy toolmaking, the constant grabbing at branches to steady yourself. But by mid-morning, the skin around the wound looks wrong. It's red in a way that isn't just irritation. The colour has depth, like it's been painted on in layers. The edges are puffy, the skin stretched tight, shining in the thin light filtering through the canopy. When you press gently around it, the heat is startling, a tiny furnace under the skin. You tell yourself you're imagining it, but when you peel back the damp scrap of shirt you've been using as a bandage, the truth is obvious. This is not healing. This is going the other way. There's a faint yellow sheen at the centre, and when you move your hand just right, a drop of cloudy fluid seeps out. You wince not from the pain, but from the realization that you've got company, billions of them, invisible enemies you didn't see arrive and can't negotiate with. You've heard about this before, infections that start small and spiral out of control. Back home, you'd clean it, put on antiseptic, cover it with a sterile bandage, maybe even get a prescription if it looked bad enough. Out here, you've got none of that. No soap, no antibiotics, not even clean water. The best you can do is rinse it in the same stream that already put an entire microscopic army in your gut. You try anyway. Kneeling by the bank, you dip your hand into the icy current. The sting is immediate, a sharp, biting pain that shoots up your arm. The water doesn't feel clean, it feels alive, and not in the way you want. You scrub gently, but the dirt clings to the wound's edges, trapped in the swelling like debris caught behind a dam. When you pull your hand back, it's still dirty, still angry, still hot. You tear off another strip of your shirt, wrapping it tighter this time. but the fabric is damp before you've even tied the knot. The heat beneath it hasn't cooled at all. If anything, it's getting worse. By midday, you're feeling it in more than just your hand. Your arm aches, a deep, bruised soreness that seems to follow the line of veins upward. You flex your fingers, and they respond slower than they should. It's not just local anymore. The infection is moving. The fever comes on slow, like a tide rising without you noticing. First, you're a little lightheaded, chalking it up to hunger and dehydration. Then you're sweating, even though the air is cool, a sticky sheen clinging to your skin. You sit down, thinking you just need a moment to rest. But when you stand again, the world tilts slightly. Somewhere in the rational part of your brain, you know the sequence. Bacteria get into the bloodstream when they travel fast, the body fights, but without help. It's a losing battle. Left long enough, it's sepsis fever spiking, organs shutting down, confusion, then nothing. You remember reading that in a book once, probably on a flight, skimming over it between emails. You never thought you'd be living the footnotes. The realization hits harder than the pain you're running out of time, and not in the poetic. Life is short sense. In the literal, you might not see another sunrise sense. It's not a predator that's going to take you, not hunger, not even the cold. It's this a few billion microscopic hitchhikers eating you from the inside out. The idea is almost laughable. You've been scanning the trees for danger, listening for claws on the forest floor, expecting something with teeth to end you. And here it is instead, something you can't hear, can't see, can't scare away. Something that doesn't care who you are, what you've built, or how many times you've stared down a bad quarter in business. You shift your position, cradling your hand against your chest to protect it, but the pressure makes it worse. Every beat of your heart sends a fresh pulse of pain through it. You can almost picture the bacteria multiplying, doubling their numbers every hour, advancing like a silent army. Your hand isn't even yours anymore, it's a battlefield, and you're losing ground. By late afternoon, the thought of doing anything physical gathering wood, finding food, even walking far feels like climbing a mountain. Your legs are weak, your vision fuzzy around the edges, and there's a ringing in your ears you can't shake. You sit more often now, telling yourself it's just for a minute, but each time it's harder to stand back up. The light is starting to fade, and you know you should make a move, find better shelter, shore up against the cold, but the urgency is gone. The infection has stolen that too, dulling everything except the pain in your hand and the heat crawling up your arm. You think about the billions of tiny enemies working away inside you, relentless and indifferent. They don't have to chase you, they don't have to outsmart you, they just have to keep doing what they're doing, and in this place, with nothing to stop them. They will. For the first time since you arrived here, you can feel the clock ticking not in the background, but in your body, and it's not counting down days or weeks. It's counting down hours. It starts as the kind of discomfort you'd normally ignore. A dull, nagging ache on the right side of your jaw, the kind you might feel after chewing something too hard. You notice it while tearing at a piece of tough bark more out of boredom than hunger and assume you've just been grinding your teeth in your sleep. Back home, it wouldn't even make the list of your daily concerns. You'd pop an ibuprofen, maybe call a dentist if it didn't go away in a few days. But out here, there's no ibuprofen, there's no dentist, and there's no few days to wait and see. Out here, every little pain feels like a warning. By the next morning, the dull ache has sharpened into something more insistent. Every bite, every clench of your jaw sends a small bolt of pain radiating up toward your ear. You probe the spot with your tongue and feel it a rough edge, a tiny crack running down the back molar. Probably nothing dramatic, you tell yourself. People live with cracked teeth all the time. You just need to be careful with what you chew. Except careful doesn't exist in this place. Every scrap of anything you put in your mouth is a gamble hard roots, gritty leaves, the occasional unidentifiable nut. There's no way to avoid the pressure on that tooth. And with every bite, the crack deepens. By midday, the pain is no longer confined to the tooth itself. It radiates up into your cheekbone, a steady throb that syncs with your heartbeat. You press the side of your face with your palm, hoping pressure will help, but it only makes the heat in the area more obvious. That's when the thought creeps in, this isn't just a cracked tooth anymore. It's an open door. You've already seen what happens when bacteria get into a wound on your hand. You've felt the fever, the weakness. Now you imagine the same thing, but inside your jaw an infection brewing in a place you can't clean, can't bandage, can't even see, it doesn't take much imagination to picture it spreading downward into your neck, upward into your sinuses, riding the bloodstream wherever it pleases. The pain climbs in intensity as the day wears on. It's no longer a background annoyance. It's the lead actor. It steals your attention from everything else, the search for food, the need for shelter, even the constant awareness of predators. You find yourself moving slower, pausing more often, pressing your jaw shut in a way that feels protective, though it changes nothing. By late afternoon, the ache has evolved into something far more sinister. It's deep now, throbbing in waves that feel like they're coming from inside the bone itself. The side of your face is tender to the touch, the skin warmer than the other side. When you try to open your mouth wide, a tight, sharp pull runs down into your neck. And then there's the taste faint at first, then unmistakable. A metallic tang, like old pennies, mixed with something sour. You don't have to be a dentist to know that's not a good sign. Something is happening inside the tooth, and it's not going to fix itself. Back in the world you left, a cracked molar might mean a couple $100 and a follow-up appointment. Here, it's a loaded gun pointed at your head. You can almost hear the voices of survival instructors in your mind. Oral infections can be fatal in the wild. Once swelling restricts the airway, or the infection reaches the bloodstream, you're done. That's the part that starts to break you, not just the pain, but the realization that you might actually die because of a tooth. Not hunger, not cold, not even a predator, just a molar that decided to split. You try to think of solutions. Could you pull it yourself? You've got no pliers, no steady grip, no guarantee you wouldn't break the tooth and make it worse. Could you carve something sharp enough to cut into it? The thought makes your stomach twist. Besides, the last time you tried to make a tool, you ended up bleeding. You can't afford another open wound. Night falls, and with it comes the worst part, the stillness. Without the distractions of daylight, the pain takes center stage. You can't chew, can't rest your head comfortably, can't stop clenching your jaw against the ache. The throbbing is relentless. Each pulse a reminder that the infection, if it started, is gathering momentum. You lie there in the dark, thinking about how this would go if you were anywhere else. You'd be in a clean chair, under bright lights, while a calm voice explained your options. There'd be gauze, antiseptic, numbing injections, tools with reassuring stainless steel gleam. And here you have a dirty scrap of cloth, a cracked tooth, and the growing certainty that the clock is ticking. Sometime in the night, the pain changes. It doesn't get better, it gets different. It spreads. The ache in your jaw now has a companion in your ear, a deep pressure that makes you feel half deaf on that side. When you swallow, the pain shoots down into your throat. The swelling has begun to move. You sit up, dizzy, feeling the fever start to simmer beneath your skin. The connection between this tooth and your fate becomes brutally clear. In a place where every calorie, every ounce of energy is precious, your body is about to start burning resources to fight something you can't even see. You think back to every deal you've closed, every problem you've solved, every time you've powered through exhaustion, because quitting wasn't an option. That instinct is still there. You want to fight this. But this isn't a boardroom or a project. This is biology, and biology doesn't care about your determination. The emotional blow lands heavier than the physical one. The thing that might finish you isn't an epic struggle or a heroic last stand. It's a dental bill you'll never get to pay. A reminder that in the wild, the line between minor inconvenience and mortal threat is razor thin. By dawn, you know the fight isn't just about surviving the environment anymore. It's about surviving your own body and the microscopic opportunists it's invited in through a crack no wider than a hair. And that thought is almost harder to bear than the pain itself. It starts with the change in the light. The forest dims, not like the slow fade of evening, but in a sudden, unnatural shift as if someone's pulled a grey veil over the sky. You glance up through the canopy and see the clouds gathering, thick and low, their edges already churning like boiling water. The first raindrops are fat and slow, the kind that almost feel playful. You tilt your head to let one hit your cheek, and for a heartbeat it's refreshing. You've been thirsty for days, after all. But the novelty doesn't last. The drops multiply, then merge, until the air itself feels wet. Then comes the wind. It arrives not as a breeze, but as a shove hard enough to sway the treetops and send a cold knife of air slicing through your damp clothes. The sound changes. 2 leaves whip and slap against each other, branches creak, and somewhere far above, a crack echoes like a gunshot as a limb gives way. You pull your shirt tighter around yourself, but it's a losing game. The rain finds every seam, every gap, slipping under fabric and running cold fingers down your spine. Your teeth start to chatter, not from fear this time, but from the sudden drop in temperature. The storm builds fast, feeding on itself. Wind drives the rain sideways now, turning each drop into a needle that stings your skin. You hunch your shoulders, head down, moving toward the thicker part of the forest in search of cover. But the trees here are no match for this kind of assault. Water pours from the canopy in steady sheets, soaking you from every direction, then the sky rips open. Lightning forks down so close you see the air between you and the ground glow white. For a split second, everything is frozen in that light. The twisted roots, the slick bark, the fine mist hanging between drops. The thunder follows instantly, a single concussive blow that seems to land inside your chest. Your ears ring, your vision swims, and then you notice it off to your left, maybe 20 yards away, a fresh scar where the bolt struck. The tree smoulders, its bark charred black, and at the base, a small cluster of glowing embers clings stubbornly to life despite the rain. For the first time in hours, hope sparks in you as real as the fire itself. This could be it. The break you've been waiting for, a chance to dry out, to warm up, to boil water and kill whatever's been eating at your gut. You sprint toward it, feet sliding in the mud, heart pounding with something that feels dangerously close to optimism. You drop to your knees beside the embers, cupping your hands around them like they're gold. They're hotter than you expected, the faint heat licking your fingers as you hunch over, shielding them from the wind. You grab the driest bits of bark you can find, most of it is damp, but maybe if you get enough heat going, it will catch. You blow gently, coaxing the glow into a flicker. For a moment, it works. The ember brightens, a thin tongue of flame curling upward, and you almost laugh. You feed it more bark, then a few brittle twigs from the heart of a fallen branch. The flame strengthens. This is it. After everything, the cold, the hunger, the gut-wrenching sickness, you might have just turned the tide. Then the rain decides otherwise. It's not just heavier, no, it's violent. The sky seems to open all at once, dumping water in sheets so thick you can see more than a few feet ahead. The wind changes direction without warning, driving the rain straight into your little cradle of flame. The glow sputters, then vanishes, leaving only a curl of smoke that disappears as quickly as it forms. You sit there, hunched over the blackened wood, your hair plastered to your face, the cold gnawing its way into your bones. The embers are gone, your hands are empty, and the forest, now roaring with the sound of the storm, doesn't care. The wind howls in your ears, drowning out every other thought. You're shivering hard enough that your vision jumps with each convulsion. Your clothes cling to you like wet paper, every drop of rain stealing heat faster than you can make it. You move because you have to. Sitting still will end you faster than the storm itself. You push yourself to your feet, legs unsteady in the sucking mud. The ground squelches under each step, and you have to grab at trunks to keep from sliding down the slight slope. Every surface is slick, every foothold treacherous. Branches whip at your face, some breaking under the force of the wind and crashing down close enough to make you flinch. You keep moving, but there's nowhere to go that isn't being torn apart by the storm. The rain finds its way into every seam of your clothing, running down your neck, pooling at the small of your back, dripping into your boots. Your socks squish with every step, and you can't tell where the water ends and your own skin begins. Somewhere in your mind, you're still holding on to the image of that tiny flame, the one moment of defiance you had against all this. It's already fading, washed away just like the embers. You realize now how cruel that moment was, not because it failed, but because it let you believe, for a heartbeat, that you had a chance. Lightning flashes again, farther this time, and for a moment you see the world in stark relief, the slanting sheets of rain, the skeletal trees bent under the weight of the wind, your own shape hunched and stumbling through it. You look small, fragile, the kind of figure the storm wouldn't even remember swallowing. By the time you find a tree with a wide enough base to give you partial shelter, You're shaking uncontrollably. You press your back against the trunk, feeling the water run down its rough surface into your hair. The wind still finds you, curling around the edges like it's hunting for any scrap of warmth you might still have. You close your eyes, just for a second, listening to the storm rage. The rain isn't background noise, it's a predator, relentless and patient, stripping away what little you have left, and it will keep going long after you stop. It happens gradually, the way a slow leak empties a ship. At first, you're just uncertain. You glance over your shoulder and realise the tree you passed looks unsettlingly like the one ahead of you. You step a little farther and see another that could be its twin. The forest here has that trick of repeating itself, as if it were designed to play games with your sense of direction. You tell yourself you'll backtrack, retrace your steps, find that bend in the stream, the flat rock you noticed earlier. But when you turn around, the path behind you looks no more familiar than the one ahead. The undergrowth has closed in, swallowing whatever faint footprints or broken twigs you might have left. You pick a direction and start moving, slower now, marking your path with small scratches on tree bark. The plan is simple: keep track, find a landmark, get your bearings. Except the scratches look less like progress, and more like a breadcrumb trail for someone who already knows they're lost. By midday, you're trying to orient yourself by the sun. It's somewhere up there, behind a gauzy ceiling of clouds, its light diffused into a flat, directionless glow. You squint at the canopy, moving your head like you're trying to catch a whisper, but all you get is the same grey wash, impossible to read. The forest floor isn't helping. It tilts subtly, rising and falling without warning, each slope leading to another that could be the same or its mirror image. You realise, with a sinking weight in your stomach, that you've been walking in what might be a slow, lazy circle. You try to shake it off. People get turned around in the woods all the time. You remind yourself, the key is to stay calm, think logically, but the longer you walk, the more every tree, every rock, every fallen log starts to blur into one endless loop. Your sense of distance begins to warp. Did you pass that twisted pine 5 minutes ago? Or 5 hours? Was the moss on its trunk facing you before? Or the other way? You can't be sure anymore. The forest doesn't just hide its secrets, it hides your memory of them. At one point, you stop and try to listen for the stream. If you can find water, you can find your way out. But the storm from the night before has left the whole forest dripping. Every branch sheds water, every leaf releases droplets, every step in the mud squelches like a small stream of its own. The soundscape is uniform, directionless. You decide to climb a small rise to get a better view, but when you reach the top, all you see are more trees. The canopy is thick, the horizon nowhere in sight. You stand there, chest heaving, realizing that you could be 20 yards from a clearing or 20 miles from the edge of this place, and you wouldn't know the difference. By late afternoon, fatigue is setting in not just in your legs, but in your head. The mental strain of scanning for patterns, of second-guessing every step, is wearing you down. You start moving faster, thinking maybe speed will break the cycle. But the faster you move, the more you miss. The more you miss, the deeper the uncertainty sinks in. And then the worst thing happens: you stop trusting your own instincts. That inner compass you've always counted on, the one that tells you which street to turn down in a strange city, or which exit to take on the highway, has gone quiet. In its place is a kind of mental static, a low hum of doubt that drowns out everything else. You catch yourself muttering under your breath, asking questions no one can answer. Wasn't there a slope here before? Didn't I hear birds in this direction? Shouldn't the ground be softer if I'm heading toward water? Somewhere in the haze, you notice you've started making small, unconscious turns, a step to avoid a route, a detour around a dense patch of brambles. Each tiny adjustment feels harmless, but together they pull you off whatever line you were trying to hold. You're not walking straight anymore, you're spiraling. You think about how animals navigate, how they use scent, the Earth's magnetic field, the position of the sun. You have none of those tools. Not really. You've traded millennia of instinct for GPS signals and street signs, and now, without them, you're just another body moving without context. The realization lands hard. You're not just lost in space, you're lost in time. The hours stretch and contract unpredictably. You can't tell if it's been minutes or days since you last felt sure of anything. Hunger flares, then fades, then flares again. Your thirst is constant. but you're wary of drinking from the wrong source after what happened before. You try one last time to mark your path tying a strip of fabric to a branch. When you circle back and see it again, your stomach drops. You've been walking in your own footsteps, tracing the same doomed loop. The panic isn't loud, it's quiet, almost polite, settling in your chest like a polite guest who's come to stay indefinitely. Your thoughts slow, not because you're calm, but because you've run out of strategies. You think about home not as a place, but as a concept. 4 walls, a door you can lock, a kitchen where you know exactly where the light switch is, even in the dark. You think about how those things never felt like miracles until now. Out here, the idea of place itself is starting to dissolve. You sit down on a fallen log, unsure if you've rested here before. The air is still. Your own breathing sounds foreign in your ears, and for the first time, you allow yourself to consider the possibility that you could walk forever and never arrive anywhere. This isn't the kind of lost that a map can fix. It's the kind that erases the map entirely. By the time the light begins to fade, you're not even trying to find your way. You're just moving to move, like a wind-up toy set loose in a room with no walls. The forest is no longer an obstacle course, it's an ocean, and you're a piece of driftwood. And as the darkness seeps in, you realize something you've been avoiding all day. You don't just not know where you are. You don't know who you are without knowing where you are. The concept of you feels tied to coordinates you can no longer locate. You are a point in space without an address, a question without a frame of reference, a shadow that might never find the body it belongs to. And in that moment, the forest isn't closing in, it's opening up into infinity, and you are nowhere. Completely, absolutely, existentially nowhere. At first, you think you're imagining it, a flicker in the dark, faint enough to be mistaken for a trick of your eyes. You stop walking, holding your breath as if that might sharpen your vision. The forest around you is thick with shadows, but there it is again, just above the undergrowth. A quick, warm blink of orange. You don't move right away. Out here, fire could mean anything. A camp of people like you, a trap set by something smarter than you'd like to admit exists, or just the dying remains of a lightning strike. But as you watch, the light swells and shrinks in a rhythm that feels deliberate. This isn't nature. Someone is tending it. Your heart beats faster, the thud of it oddly loud in your chest. For days you've been the only moving thing in your world that wasn't trying to eat you, poison you, or outlast you. The thought that there might be voices ahead, human voices, makes your legs feel suddenly lighter. You start forward slowly, keeping your steps deliberate and soft. The ground is uneven, slick from the earlier storm, but you use the trees for balance, careful to avoid snapping twigs. You're close enough now to hear the faint pop and hiss of burning wood. There's a rhythm to that sound too, a cadence you know in your bones. It's the sound of warmth, of food, of safety concepts that have been reduced to distant memories lately. As you move closer, the smell hits you. Smoke, rich and earthy, with a hint of something else fat, maybe, cooking over the flames. The scent wraps around you, pulling you forward. Hunger sharpens every nerve, makes your mouth water despite the dryness in your throat. Through a break in the trees, you see them. 4 figures, huddled near the fire. The light dances over their faces, throwing features into sharp relief before swallowing them back into shadow. They're dressed in layers of fur and leather, shapes rough but functional. Their hands move with the casual precision of people who have done this 1,000 times, turning meat on a spit, adjusting logs, passing something between them. You stand still, half hidden behind a trunk, watching. You don't hear words exactly, but you catch the rise and fall of speech-murmured tones, low chuckles, the occasional sharper sound that might be a question or a warning. The language is unfamiliar, but the cadence is unmistakable. Conversation, interaction, the simple, unremarkable miracle of people talking to each other. It's almost too much to take in at once. For so long, the only sounds you've heard have been your own voice muttering to yourself, the wind, the snap of branches under your own weight. Now, here are others living, breathing, sharing warmth and food in a circle of light that cuts cleanly through the dark. You take a step forward, then another, testing the ground for noise before committing your weight. A branch cracks under your boot, sharp as a gunshot in the stillness. The voices stop. One of the figures turns slightly, Head cocked toward your hiding place. You freeze, pulse racing. There's a momentous stretch of stillness so thin it could snap before the voices start again. Softer now, but still there. You edge closer, close enough to see the details. The fire is built in a low pit, ringed with stones blackened from long use. The meat turning on the spit is some small animal, skin crisping, juices hissing where they hit the coals. There's a pile of gathered wood stacked nearby, and beside it, what looks like a heap of furs for sleeping. You step into the open before you can talk yourself out of it. The firelight hits you, and all four heads turn in unison. The conversation dies again. You raise your hands slightly, not high, not in surrender, just enough to show they're empty. For a long second, no one moves. You can feel the weight of their eyes on you, measuring. They're close enough now that you can see the fine details, the lines etched by weather and work into their skin, the way their clothes are stitched together from scraps of different hides, the glint of firelight in their eyes. One of them says something, short, sharp. Another replies in the same language, their tone unreadable. You take another step closer, the smell of the cooking meat making your stomach cramp with longing. You point toward the fire, then to yourself, then mimic holding your hands out to warm them. You don't know if they understand, but you hope the gesture is universal. For a moment, nothing. Then one of them shifts slightly, making room near the fire. It's not an invitation exactly, but it's not rejection either. You step forward slowly, each movement careful, as if you're approaching a wild animal. The heat from the fire hits you before you sit down. It's almost painful at first, the contrast against your cold, damp skin. But within seconds, it sinks deep, loosening muscles you didn't realize had been clenched for days. You extend your hands toward it, watching the steam rise from your sleeves. No one offers you food, but you don't care. Just being here, inside the circle of light, feels like a kind of salvation. The crackle of the fire, the low murmur of voices, it's enough to make your chest ache with something you haven't felt in a long time. Hope. You glance around the fire, meeting each set of eyes in turn. They don't smile, they don't speak to you, but they also don't turn you away. For now, that's all you need. The forest still presses in beyond the reach of the flames, dark and full of the same dangers that have been stalking you since you arrived. But inside this circle, for this moment, you're not alone, and that changes everything. You sit there, letting the warmth seep into you, and imagine just for a breath that this is the turning point. That tomorrow you'll walk with them, share in their food, learn their paths, that maybe, somehow, you found your way back to something resembling a life. Whether that's true or not doesn't matter yet. For now, there is firelight, there are voices, and there is the fragile, dangerous bloom of hope in your chest, daring you to believe you might not have to face the darkness alone anymore. They don't send you away right away. It's worse than that. They let you stay just long enough for hope to start weaving its little lies in your head. The fire burns low now, the flames settling into a deep, red bed of coals. You've thawed enough to feel the ache in your fingers again, and though no one has spoken to you directly, their silence had been hostile. You tell yourself this is progress. You tell yourself that people who mean to harm you don't let you sit this close to their fire. But as the night stretches on, you start to notice the gaps, the way they angle their bodies so none of their backs are turned to you, the subtle shifts in conversation words dropping into quieter registers whenever your head turns toward them. They speak in glances as much as in language, eyes flicking from you to each other, measuring something you can't see. One of them, a tall man with deep lines in his face, finally addresses you. His voice is low and even, but the tone carries no warmth. He gestures toward your hands, then toward the pile of wood stacked neatly by the fire. You nod, happy for the chance to prove you're worth keeping around, and get to your feet. The wood pile is just a few steps away, but the moment you reach for it, you feel the shift. The conversation behind you pauses, eyes on your back now. You carry the wood over anyway, place it gently by the fire, and step back to your spot. No one thanks you. It happens again a few minutes later, this time. One of the women gestures to a skin stretched out on a frame near the fire. You crouch beside it, inspecting the work, and she makes a quick, precise gesture with her hands. You think she's showing you how to scrape the hide, so you mimic the motion. She watches for a few seconds, then takes the tool back without a word and resumes the work herself. The message is clear you're here, but you're not part of this. When they finally eat, the smell is almost unbearable. Meat hisses and pops in the firelight, fat dripping into the coals with sharp little sparks. They carve it into pieces and pass them around, hands working quickly, cleanly, with the familiarity of people who have done this every night of their lives. None of it reaches you. You watch the food disappear from hand to hand, and a heat rises in your chest that has nothing to do with the fire. You've shared fires before in campgrounds, in hunting trips, in late-night backyards where the beer made everyone a little more generous. Food was always passed without question. It was a baseline rule of being human. You feed the people sitting at your fire. But here, the rule is different. Here, the fire is not proof of belonging. It's proof of proximity. It takes a while for the truth to land you're not a person to them. You're a situation, an unpredictable variable, a problem to be managed until it can be removed. You catch their eyes sometimes, looking for cracks in the wall they've built. The younger man meets your gaze once, but looks away quickly. The older woman doesn't meet it at all. The tall man watches you without blinking, his expression as neutral as stone. When the meal is done, they go back to speaking in low tones. You sit there, feeling the warmth seep away from your bones even as the fire still burns. You can't understand their words, but you can understand their body language, the subtle turning in toward each other, the unspoken circle you're not inside. You think about the logic of it, how it makes perfect sense from their perspective. In this world, every extra mouth to feed is a liability. Every stranger is a risk disease, danger, betrayal. Trust isn't given here. It's earned over seasons, maybe years, and you have nothing to offer them. No skills they can see, no shared history to anchor you in their minds. Just your presence, cold and hungry and unproven. Eventually, the tall man stands. He looks at you for a long moment, then points away from the fire toward the dark wall of trees. There's no malice in the gesture, no threat, just a decision, delivered like a fact of weather. You stay seated for a heartbeat too long, hoping you've misunderstood. But the woman beside him doesn't look at you, and the younger man is already adding more wood to the fire, his back turned. There's no argument to make, no language you could use that would change this. Even if you could speak their words, what would you say that you can be useful, that you can learn? They've already decided. You rise slowly, your legs stiff from the hours of stillness. The heat of the fire feels like it's retreating from you, the way a room cools when the door is left open to the night. You take a step back, then another, your eyes adjusting to the dark as the firelight fades from your skin. The forest swallows you again, the sound of the fire and the voices dimming behind you. You glance over your shoulder once, but they're already turned away, their world closing neatly back around the circle you never entered. The cold hits harder now, not just in your body but in your chest. It's one thing to fight against the wild, to pit yourself against weather and hunger and sickness. It's another to be turned away by the only people you've seen in days, maybe weeks. You walk until the light is completely gone, until even the memory of the fire feels distant. The forest is quiet in that way that feels less like peace and more like indifference. You're moving, but it doesn't feel like you're going anywhere. At some point, you stop and look back, even though you know there's nothing to see. You imagine the fire still burning, the meat still cooking, the voices still murmuring, life going on without you, and then you turn away for good, stepping deeper into the dark, the cold folding over you like water closing over a stone. It doesn't happen all at once. The cold doesn't slam into you like a predator this time. It seeps in, slow and patient, the way water seeps into wood until it swells and warps. You've been shivering for so long that you barely notice when the tremors weaken, then fade. At first you take it as a good sign. Maybe your body's adjusting, maybe you're tougher than you thought. But the truth is simpler and crueler. Your body is giving up. You stop feeling your fingertips first. Then the numbness spreads up your hands, your wrists, your forearms, until they feel like they belong to someone else. Your steps get slower, not because you're tired, but because each movement feels disconnected, like you're sending signals to limbs that no longer take orders well. Somewhere in the back of your mind, you know what's happening. You've read about the stages of hypothermia, probably while scrolling through survival articles in a warm living room. You remember the list: intense shivering, loss of coordination, slurred speech, irrational behaviour, and finally, paradoxical undressing, when your body, in its final confusion, convinces you you're warm. That last part always seemed absurd to you. Warmth at the end. But now you understand. It starts as a faint flush along your chest, a bloom of heat that feels almost intimate. You unzip your damp shirt halfway, letting the cold air in, expecting it to bite. It doesn't. Instead, you feel comfortable, lighter, even the kind of comfort you haven't felt since before you got here. Your breathing slows. The cold, instead of stabbing at your lungs, feels soft. You sink to your knees without meaning to, the ground giving under you in a way that feels almost inviting. You stay there for a moment, hands resting on your thighs, eyes half closed. That's when the visions begin. They're not sharp like dreams, not fully formed like memories, but something in between. You see the warm yellow light of a kitchen you used to know, the smell of coffee and toast drifting through the air. You hear the murmur of conversation voices you can't quite place but know you've loved. Then the scene shifts, and you're walking down a familiar street in winter. Snow piles along the sidewalks, but you're warm under a heavy coat, your breath fogging in the air. You pass shop windows lit with strings of lights, and the glass reflects a version of you that's smiling. You know, in some dim, rational part of your mind, that none of this is real, but the cold has loosened the knots of self-preservation enough that you don't care. Your legs fold under you, and you sink the rest of the way to the ground. The earth is hard, but you barely register it. You lean back against a tree, letting its rough bark press into your spine. The visions keep coming. Now it's a campfire, not the one you found before, but one from a lifetime ago, on a camping trip you'd nearly forgotten. You can feel the heat on your face, the glow painting everyone's skin in gold. Someone passes you a mug, and you wrap your hands around it, the steam curling up into your nose. You blink, and the mug is gone, your hands empty and pale in the dim light. You stare at them, fascinated by the way they don't quite feel like yours anymore. The warmth grows. It's everywhere now, under your skin, in your chest, curling into the hollow spaces of your bones. You open your shirt the rest of the way, sighing at the release, at the strange pleasure of the air against your bare skin. Somewhere far away, a voice in your head is shouting at you to get up, to move, to fight, but it's a faint, tinny echo compared to the fullness of this comfort. Your thoughts slow, not in panic, but in a drifting way, like leaves settling to the bottom of a pond. The edges of the forest blur. You can't tell if the shadows between the trees are real or just more visions people you knew once, walking toward you, their faces warm with recognition. One kneels beside you. You know they can't be here, but you don't question it. Their hand rests lightly on your shoulder, and you feel that same impossible heat radiating into you. You're all right now, they say, though you're not sure if the words are spoken aloud or just land directly in your head. The cold that has been your constant enemy doesn't feel like an enemy anymore. It feels like an embrace, like a weight you've been carrying has finally decided to carry you instead. Your eyelids grow heavier, you let them close, and in the darkness behind them, the visions merge kitchens and campfires and streets in winter, all bathed in the same golden light. The sound of crackling wood blends with the murmur of voices, the whisper of snow falling on rooftops. You could stay here. You want to stay here. The last thing you register before you drift completely is the sound of your own breathing, slow and steady, and the faint, contented thought that you finally found the warmth you were searching for all along. And when the cold claims you at last, it doesn't feel like surrender. It feels like coming home. It comes to you slowly, like a picture resolving through fog, not in the fevered haze of hunger or the half-dreams of cold, but in that deep, clear place your mind sometimes drifts to when it has no more energy left to fight. You're still slumped against the tree, your body heavy, your skin numb, but your thoughts, they feel strangely weightless. You start thinking about the people who walked this land before you, not in the abstract way you might have considered them back home, flipping through a book or watching a documentary, but as actual, breathing humans. People who felt the same bite of wind, the same crack of dry branches underfoot. People who knew, intimately, the rules of this place in a way you never did. You picture them moving through the forest with a kind of quiet certainty, reading the tilt of a branch, the curl of animal scat, the pattern of lichen on a stone, knowing, without hesitation, where the river bends or when the snow will fall, not because they checked an app or read a forecast, but because their survival depended on noticing, remembering, and passing that knowledge on. And that's when the contrast hits you. You came here carrying nothing but the veneer of knowledge, things learned in passing, trivia gathered in climate-controlled rooms. You had survival tips in your head the way you might have recipes bookmarked but never cooked. They had skills written into their muscles, into the shared memory of their people. You realize now that the most dangerous thing you carried into this place wasn't hunger, or thirst, or even inexperience. It was disconnection, a severing from the thread that tied them to each other and to the world they moved through. Your mind drifts to what community must have meant back then, not a networking event, not a list of contacts in a phone, but a literal lifeline. Every member knew something that kept the others alive. One person could read the stars. Another knew which plants healed and which killed. Another could coax fire from damp wood. Alone. Each might falter. Together, they endured. You see it clearly, a circle of firelight on a night much like this one. Children listening, wide-eyed, as the elders speak, not in the voice of authority, but in the voice of memory. Passing on not just facts, but stories. The kind that wrapped truth in meaning, that made survival part of identity, not just necessity. In that vision, you understand something you never quite grasped before. These people weren't just surviving for themselves. They were living for the ones who would come after. Every skill mastered, every hardship endured, every danger overcome was a gift they were preparing to hand forward. Generation by generation, they were the future, and because of them, so were you. Only now, you've stepped out of that chain. You've been living at the far end of it without even realizing the strength it took to get here. The lives stacked under yours aren't just names in a history book, they're the scaffolding you've been standing on your entire life. And the thought of that scaffolding collapsing, it feels like a loss you can't measure. You think about the elders who must have sat in circles like the one you glimpsed last night, speaking into the dark not because they loved the sound of their own voices, but because silence meant extinction. You wonder if they ever looked at the youngest among them and felt the same pang you feel now, that worry that the knowledge might fade, that the thread might fray. The irony isn't lost on you. You've spent your life in a world bursting with information, more than anyone could ever absorb. Yet here, where only the right knowledge matters, you've had almost none of it. You've been living in the shadow of their brilliance without ever having to touch the raw, hard edges of it, until now. Your thoughts soften into gratitude, not the easy kind you feel when someone holds a door for you, but the heavy, wordless kind that sits in the center of your chest. You owe your existence to people you'll never meet, whose names you'll never know, people who fought their way through storms and hunger and sickness, not for glory, but so the line wouldn't end with them. You wonder what they would make of you, here in their place. Would they pity you, scold you, or would they simply understand because in their time, everyone knew that survival wasn't a solitary act. It was a debt you paid forward. The images in your mind shift again, hands passing tools, water skins, food, a net being woven from fibers, each strand holding because the others do. You see the rhythm of a shared hunt, the unspoken communication in glances and gestures, the collective exhale when the work is done and the meal is safe. And then you see yourself, not as you are now, but as you could have been, kneeling beside them, learning the weight of a spear, the patience of a trap, the feel of the wind before rain. Belonging not because you stumbled into their firelight one night, but because you'd been there all along, contributing your piece to the whole. The vision tightens into a single, piercing truth. Strength wasn't just in their bodies, it was in their connections. Alone, you are weak. Together, they were unstoppable. Your breath fogs faintly in the air. You notice the cold again, but it doesn't feel as sharp. You're aware that your body is failing, but the fear has softened. It's not that you want to die, it's that you can't help but be awed by the ones who refuse to, and by what they built in the face of every reason to give up. You close your eyes and see them clearly now, not as faceless ancestors, but as a line of people stretching back into the dark, each one carrying the weight forward a little further. You feel, in some strange way, that you finally stepped into their gaze not as a success story, but as someone who remembers them in the moment it matters most. And if that's the last thought you carry, it feels right. Because they were the future, and for a brief, flickering moment, you understood what that meant. The forest is quiet now, not the tense, waiting kind of quiet that makes you glance over your shoulder, but the deep, settled stillness that comes when everything has already happened. The air feels softer against your skin. Even the cold, though still there, no longer has teeth. Your breaths are slow, steady, one rising in a faint mist that curls upward before fading into the dark. Somewhere above, the clouds have thinned enough for the stars to break through. Scattered and sharp in the black, you find yourself staring at them, tracing patterns you don't know the names for. It doesn't matter. The light they're throwing at you started its journey long before you were here, and will keep travelling long after you're gone. There's no rush in you anymore, no checklist, no desperate scanning of the horizon for signs of rescue. The urgency that has been your constant companion since the moment you arrived is gone. What's left is peace. You lean back, feeling the rough bark of the tree press into your shoulders. The forest smells clean, like wet earth and leaf mould, the kind of smell that seeps into your bones and makes you think of endings and beginnings at the same time. Somewhere far off, an owl calls once, twice, and then is silent again. Your thoughts drift, not in the restless way they did when you were planning your next move, but like a leaf floating down a slow stream. Faces pass through your mind, the strangers at the fire, the people you knew before this, the ones you'll never meet who came before all of you. They blur together, becoming less about the individual and more about the connection itself. You realise now that you are part of that same loop. You always were, even when you didn't feel it. You came from the same long chain, carried by the same stubborn will to survive, even if you didn't know how to tend it. That connection was never something you had to earn, was something you inherited, just by being here at all. The wind stirs the branches above, sending a gentle rain of droplets down on you. They land on your face, your hands, and you don't flinch. The cold is no longer an adversary. It's just part of the rhythm now, as natural as the way the stars shift overhead. You close your eyes for a moment, listening. Not for danger, but for the simple fact of the forest being alive around you. The small clicks of settling wood, the distant gurgle of water moving over stone, the faint rustle of something small in the underbrush, not threatening, just existing alongside you. The story you've been living doesn't feel linear anymore. It feels circular, like you've walked all the way around something you didn't know you were circling, and now you're back where you started, but with eyes that see it differently. You came here clinging to the idea of survival as an act of defiance. Now it feels more like an act of joining. The stars blur a little as you blink, your eyelids growing heavier. You let them close, and behind them the darkness isn't empty. It's full of the shapes and colours of the forest, the glow of remembered fires, the silhouettes of people you'll never meet but somehow still know. Your breathing slows further. Each inhale feels like it's folding you a little more into the world around you, like the line between where you end and where everything else begins has started to dissolve. In your last clear thought, you picture the loop continuing somewhere else, sitting under a sky just like this, breathing the same air, looking at the same stars. You don't need to know their name to feel the connection. The forest exhales, and you exhale with it. No struggle, no fear. Just the quiet certainty that you found your place in the only circle that matters. Sweet dreams. You think this is the end. You think the story closes here, one life, one circle, one quiet breath beneath the trees. But endings are never clean. They spill questions into the spaces they leave behind. Because now that you've felt the weight of this place, now that you've stood, however briefly, in the skin of someone who lived here for real, how do you walk away without asking? Who was the first human to hear the crack of a dry branch in the dark and know, instantly, whether it was predator or prey, who taught them? How many wrong guesses did it take before the knowledge became instinct? When did someone first look up at the same stars you're seeing now and realise they weren't just lights, but a map? Did they follow that map into the unknown or home? And when the first fire was made, not stolen from lightning, but born from human hands, who was the one to keep it alive through the night? What did they trade for the wood? What did they whisper into the flames while the others slept? You feel the questions layering on top of each other now. Who was the first to sharpen stone and call it a blade, to carve a fishhook from bone, to grind pigment into dust and leave a handprint on the wall of a cave, not as decoration, but as proof I was here? And what about the stories that never made it into the caves? The ones carried only in the mouths of the living? How many voices had to go silent before an entire way of seeing? The world disappeared forever. We like to imagine we've solved the puzzle of them, that with enough excavation and carbon dating and DNA analysis, we've laid them bare. But there are still things no artifact can tell us. What did laughter sound like in a world with no machines, no hum of electricity? Was it louder, or quieter, or simply rarer? How did they measure a day? When hours didn't exist, when time was told by shadow, by the sound of wind, by the way the air cooled in the late afternoon, and the biggest itch of all, how much of them is still in you, the way you scan a room when you walk in, the way your pulse quickens when you hear running water, the way a campfire can make you feel safer than four walls. These are not quirks, they're inheritance. Your body is an archive, and it remembers more than you know. So if you stripped away the steel and glass and glowing screens, if you found yourself out here with nothing but your hands and whatever you could carry in your head, would you last? Would you know where to walk, what to eat, when to rest? Or would you, like so many before you, vanish into the silence between the trees, your story ending where theirs began? The questions keep coming. How did they cross the oceans before they knew there was such a thing as an ocean? Who looked at a wild animal and thought, maybe this can be a friend, and then proved it? What was the first lullaby, and who sang it? And here's one you can't shake in all the thousands of years of human history, in all the places people have lived and died. How many lives ended with the same thought you're having now, this strange mix of gratitude and wonder, and the tiniest thread of regret? You start to realize these aren't really their questions, they're yours, and you've been carrying them your whole life without knowing. Every time you walked into the woods, every time you stared too long at a fire, every time you felt the pull of a horizon you couldn't see the end of. That's the real inheritance, not their tools, not their bones, but their curiosity. The thing that made them walk further, climb higher, stay awake longer than comfort allowed. The thing that pushed them to answer one question, only to find 10 more waiting behind it. And here you are, thousands of years later, still asking. Maybe that's why these stories matter, not because they tell us what happened, but because they keep the questions alive. Because somewhere in you, as in them, is the knowledge that survival was never just about finding food or shelter. It was about finding meaning. And now, as the night deepens and the forest folds around you, you feel that itch in your chest, that urge to lean forward, to keep going, to see what's beyond the next hill, not because you expect an answer, but because the asking itself is the fire that's been passed down. The questions will always be there. They're the embers in the ashes small, glowing points of heat that can survive the longest night if someone tends them. That's the truth our ancestors knew. And it's the truth we forget too easily. A fire doesn't just keep you warm, it keeps you together. It gives you a place to gather, to share the stories and the skills that might be the difference between seeing another sunrise or not. You and I, sitting here in this strange space where past and present blur, are part of that same circle. We don't share the same sky they did, or the same dangers, but the thread runs unbroken. The same way they carried their fire from camp to camp, we carry ours in the form of memory, curiosity, and knowledge. And here's the thing keeping that fire isn't a one-person job. It never has been. In every age, in every place. It's been a shared act. Someone gathered the wood. Someone fed the flames. Someone kept watch so it wouldn't go out while the others rested. Right now, in this moment, we're doing the same, passing the spark. Through stories, through questions, through the small skills we teach each other. Whether it's tying a knot, reading the weather and the wind, or simply remembering that we've stood here before and found our way through. That's why this doesn't end with me talking and you listening. It ends with us speaking together, masking, you answering, and the next person who hears it carrying it further. So here's my ask, and it's not about likes or shares or algorithms. It's simpler, more human. Tell me one thing you've learned, big or small, that could help someone else survive. Maybe it's how to start a fire with damp wood. Maybe it's the plant your grandfather showed you that's safe to eat. Maybe it's a story about the time you got lost and found your way home. Leave it in the comments. Not just for me, but for everyone who comes here looking for that spark. Because one day, someone might read your words when they need them most. And that's how the tribe works now, not around a single fire in a clearing, but in 1,000 little circles connected by invisible lines. This screen is our firelight, and your voice is another piece of wood on the flame. You don't need to have lived in the Stone Age to be part of the chain. You just have to care enough to keep the fire alive for the next person. That's what they did for us, without ever knowing our names. That's what we can do for each other now. So as we close this story, I want you to imagine that you're back at that circle not as the stranger standing outside, but as someone already seated among them. The night is cold, but the fire is warm, the voices are low, and someone is telling a story you've never heard before. You listen, and when they're done, you have one to add. That's the rhythm of human survival, and it's still ours to keep. Thank you for staying here with me tonight, for walking these miles, for feeling the cold and the hunger and the questions that come with them. You've been part of something old, something that started long before us and will outlast both of us if we tend it well. So until next time, keep your fire close, feed it when you can, and don't be afraid to pass it on. Sweet dreams, tribe, and when you wake tomorrow, whether it's to the sound of rain on the roof or the beep of your coffee maker, remember this: every comfort you touch is built on someone else's hardship. The roof once. It was a pile of branches, leaking just enough to remind you the sky was still there. That coffee in another age, it might have been a bitter root boiled just to trick your stomach into thinking it was full. We are the inheritors of every stubborn, clever, desperate human who refused to quit when quitting would have been easier. They didn't know the word future, but they built it anyway one safe night, one meal, one scrap of knowledge passed to whoever was listening. That's why what you just did sitting here, listening, imagining, isn't just entertainment, it's training. Not the kind with medals and finish lines, but the kind that changes what you notice, what you value, and what you might choose when the world asks something hard of you. And one day, it will. Not with a saber-toothed shadow outside your camp, maybe, but with something quieter, a moment when someone you care about is lost, or scared, or just out of light. And you'll remember the shape of nights like this, the way the fire's glow can mean survival, the way a voice in the dark can mean you're not alone. That's when you'll realize survival isn't only about your own breath, it's about keeping the flame visible enough that someone else can find their way to it. So when you leave this video, take a piece of it with you, not as a story frozen on a screen, but as something you carry like an ember wrapped in dry moss, ready to light the next fire when it's needed. Because the Stone Age never really ended. The tools changed, the threats changed, but the troopeth need for one another didn't. We'll see you at the next fire. Until then, walk steady, watch the shadows, and keep the stories close. And as you sit there, warmed by the blue glow of your screen instead of a fire pit, it's easy to forget how recent this shift really was. A few thousand years is nothing. Your ancestors measured time in seasons, not in seconds. They built calendars from the moon, not from quartz crystals vibrating inside a wristwatch. That phone in your hand, it's just another stone tool, except the stone is refined, melted, reborn as glass and silicon. It's obsidian, sharpened to slice through networks instead of deer hide. Your thumbs strike the screen the way theirs struck flint. The spark is still there. It's just buried under a touch of plastic. When you open your fridge, you don't call it a storehouse. But that's exactly what it is: a cave that hums, filled with meat that doesn't rot. You lock it with electricity instead of keys, but the ritual is unchanged. The anxiety of running out has been buried under layers of packaging, but it lingers. That's why we stockpile snacks for a movie night, why a power outage feels like a siege. Somewhere in your bones, the famine hasn't ended. Think about the water you drink, crystal clear, piped across miles, scrubbed with chemicals and UV light. You turn a tap, and it flows like a river that never runs dry. But your gut doesn't know that. Your gut remembers the parasites. It remembers when every sip was a gamble. That's why bottled water companies exist. That's why Pure still sells. Deep down, you're still thirsty, still cautious, still cringing at the memory of a stream that could kill, and fire always fire. Today, it's disguised as central heating, LED bulbs, power plants far away. But the ritual is identical. You gather around screens the way your ancestors gathered around flames. You tell stories, share fears, laugh in the dark. The circle hasn't broken, it's just migrated onto Wi-Fi. Instead of wood smoke, it's pixels. Instead of sparks, it's notifications. And yet the warmth you feel when someone leaves a comment, when someone acknowledges you, that's the ember of belonging. That's the same ember that kept you alive when the snow piled high. Even comfort is currency. Back then, warmth was a blanket of fur. Today, it's a steady paycheck, a locked front door, a full battery icon glowing green. Lose any of those, and the old fear rises again. You felt it when your phone dies in the middle of nowhere. You felt it when the lights go out during a storm. You felt it when you step outside in winter without a coat, and your body remembers instantly that cold is not weather, it's death dressed in white. Look around your room, the hum of the fridge, the tick of the clock, the buzz of the Wi-Fi router, they are the crackle of your fire. Each appliance is a tribe member, doing its duty, keeping the circle intact. Without them, you'd last less than a week. We like to pretend we're independent, but survival has never been a solo sport. It's always been a group project. So when you click subscribe, you're not just supporting a channel, you're adding a log to the fire. You're acknowledging that stories, even in the digital age, still keep us warm. Because stories remind us of hunger, of cold, of thirst, so that we don't have to feel them firsthand. Stories are survival rehearsed safely. They are the ember we pass forward. The parasites in your gut tonight aren't fiction. They have names, and we found their traces. In the frozen body of Circe, the Iceman pulled from an alpine glacier after 5,000 years, scientists found the same giardia that turned your stream into poison. A tiny, flagellated hitchhiker that never cared about your ambition, only about multiplying. It gnawed at him, just as it gnawed at you in this story. Proof that survival was never about conquering nature, but negotiating with its smallest armies. In Shanadar Cave, in the Kurdish mountains, the skeleton of a Neanderthal lies curled where he fell. His bones tell a story, shattered ribs that healed, a missing arm, a blind eye. He should have died young. Instead, the evidence shows he lived years after those injuries because his tribe carried him, fed him, kept him warm. Community wasn't sentiment, it was prosthetic. Their survival rate wasn't higher because they were stronger, but because they refused to abandon the weak. Even teeth tell tales. In ancient jaws, archaeologists find abscesses swollen into the bone, infections that must have burned like fire in the skull. No anesthesia, no clean tools, just grit. And maybe a poultice of herbs passed down from someone who learned by trial and error. When your cracked molar pulsed in the dark earlier, you were standing in that same lineage of pain. Some survived. Many didn't. The difference often came down to luck and knowledge, the same fragile line we still walk. And then there are the handprints. Red ochre palms pressed against cave walls in Europe, Indonesia, Argentina. We think of them as art, but maybe they were manuals, proof of existence, lessons written in pigment. I was here. This way is safe. This food doesn't kill you. Imagine standing in the dark with only firelight, tracing those prints with your eyes, realizing they were left by someone who faced the same hunger and cold, and wanted you to know where to step. Archaeology is often presented as puzzle pieces, stone tools, fragments of bone, pollen grains in a hearth. But when you line them up, they whisper something simple. The story hasn't changed. The same struggles echo. Fire, food, water, sickness, tribe. If you stripped away the skyscrapers and satellites, you'd land right back here, in the circle of needs your ancestors knew by heart. Even now, modern science keeps digging up their warnings. Charred seeds in a clay pot remind us that crops fail. Ancient dung layers in caves tell us winters stretch too long. Burial pits lined with flowers prove that grief isn't new, only the rituals we wrap it in. And mass grave skeletons lying side by side with lesions on their bones remind us that plague is older than history itself. The irony, we study them from behind glass cases and climate control, as though they are the fragile ones. But it's us who are fragile. Remove the antibiotics, the electricity, the supply chains, and our lives unravel faster than theirs ever did. They carried their fire in stone bowls across rivers. We panic when the Wi-Fi drops. So when you imagine yourself in their place tonight, it isn't just storytelling, It's archaeology of the self. It's unearthing the instincts buried in your body, the way you tense at footsteps behind you, the way your mouth waters at the sound of running water, the way firelight still calms your heartbeat. These aren't quirks. They are fossils, alive under your skin. And they are proof that history isn't behind you. It's inside you. Every shiver, every cramp, every flash of fear in the dark is a line in the same script written tens of thousands of years ago. You've just read it again, in your own body. And here's where the story folds back into you. Not the you stumbling through the Stone Age night, but the real you sitting in a room with a screen glowing like a campfire. You're not cold, you're not starving, but you're still human, and the rules haven't changed as much as you think, because survival, even today, is still a circle. It's still the fire we gather around. Every time you leave a comment, you're adding to that circle, a trick about making fire with wet wood, a memory of your grandmother boiling roots to calm a fever, a warning about the time you drank the wrong stream water on a hike. You don't know whose night you're warming with those words. You don't know who will scroll past them at 3 a.m. with the same insomnia you felt, and find something they need. That's the hidden power of this little tribe we're building. The Stone Age never ended, it just got broadband. Instead of ochre handprints on cave walls, we leave digital ones, pressed into timelines and comment sections. I was here, this worked for me, this might help you. Think about it, your great-grandparents carried knowledge through lullabies, kitchen recipes, whispered instructions by candlelight. You carry it by typing into a box under a video. The shape changed, but the act didn't. Passing survival forward has always been humanity's real inheritance, and it doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be as small as teaching someone the name of a wild plant that won't kill them, or the way to stay calm when they're lost in the woods, or even how to breathe slowly when the panic sets in. These are skills, yes. But more than that, they're fire, sparks moving across time. When you see the word community online, it can sound cheap like a buzzword tacked onto an ad, but here it's literal. The only reason you're alive to read this is because countless strangers kept each other alive long enough to pass you the baton. The chain never broke, it just bent, reshaped, and carried on. So I'll ask again, plainly, like a neighbour leaning in closer across the firelight, what have you learned that could keep someone else alive? Drop it below, not for the algorithm, for the tribe, for the person who might need it tomorrow, because one day, someone will. That's how it's always been. And if you think you don't have anything to offer, remember this: even a story of failure teaches. Even a memory of getting it wrong could save someone from repeating it. Even a joke can ease the fear of a night that feels too long. In the Stone Age, laughter was medicine too. This circle is bigger than one channel, bigger than one storyteller. It's 1,000 screens flickering in the dark, each one a little campfire, each one a reminder that you're not out here alone. So stay, speak, share. Because every log you throw on this digital fire makes the night smaller for all of us. And when you close your laptop, or set down your phone, and the glow fades from your room, you'll still be carrying it. The warmth isn't just pixels, it's memory, it's story, it's tribe. Welcome to it.